O'clock. Welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting today of the 28th of February, the last day of summer. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meeting via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair, and I am the Chair. In line with the Local Government Act, or whoever is sitting in here if I'm not. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend council meetings electronically or in person, and the meeting will be open to the public via live streaming, and it is tonight. Members of the public are invited to view the live stream council meeting by following the link on the council's website or Facebook page. If we, council, encounter technical difficulties tonight with the live streaming during the meeting, we'll adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time and date. So we would like to acknowledge, as East Gippsland Shire Council, we'll acknowledge the Gunai, Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal peoples as the traditional custodians of the land and waters that encompass East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council values their living culture and their practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders, past, present and emerging. A member's attendance can only be recorded as present at the council meeting when the member can confirm they meet all of these conditions or criteria. So at the moment we have Councillor White and Councillor Buckley joining us remotely. We need to understand that they can hear the proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members and can be heard to speak. So I'll now confirm with each of Councillors White and Buckley in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note assurance from each that the location they're participating from is secure to ensure confidential deliberations remain confidential. Good evening, Councillor White. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Can you confirm the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Councillor White. Good evening, Councillor Buckley. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Can you confirm the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Indeed it is.
Thank you, councillors. CEO, I don't think we have any apologies. Councillors and officers, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Mr Cannizzaro.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have a material conflict of interest for item 7.1 tonight, because if the motion's passed tonight, that will impact my remuneration. Accordingly, I will at the appropriate time remove myself from the council chamber until the matter is being dealt with by council.
Mr Cannizzaro, thank you. Noted. Councillors, item 1.4 is a confirmation of the minutes and the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, 7th of February 2023 be confirmed. Do I have a mover? Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Stowe, do you want to speak to the matter? No, Councillor Allen? No, thank you. Is the item opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I'll put it to the vote that we confirm the minutes of the 7th of February. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. The item is carried. Did you get the count there? Thank you, CEO. Yep. The next meeting, councillors and those in attendance, will be held on Tuesday, 21 of March 2023 here at the Corporate Centre, 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, commencing at 6 p.m. as we are tonight. I don't think we have any requests for leave of absence.
None received.
We haven't. Item 1.7 is the open forum. I haven't seen any petitions, but we may have a question of council.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
We have two questions, two people who are asking questions tonight. The first one, Mr Brenton Rule, has asked me to read those questions on his behalf, which I will do. Thank you. And then we have a second person who is asked to read their own questions. So we'll start with Mr Brenton Rule. Question one was in relation to Slip Road Paynesville development. What went wrong and why? Question 2, why is it that so far into the project, the Slip Road Painesville development project that is, this problem has happened, and why is it that the Shire project management has not been managing the situation to avoid a major impost on East Gippsland ratepayers? And I'll ask Ms Weigel to respond.
Yep, thanks, CEO.
Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. In relation to the first question, there are often a range of changes that need to be made to a project as it transitions from a paper-based design to construction, especially in a marine environment. In this case, the piling did not perform in the manner expected. Therefore, the contractor was demobilised so that additional hydrological assessment could be undertaken. It is far better to undertake this assessment on paper than try and problem solve during the construction phase. And in relation to question 2, as I've already mentioned, the delays are primarily the result of piling materials not performing in the manner anticipated during design. This has led to the need for additional hydrological assessment. With the widespread flooding experienced throughout Australia over the past year, the services of hydrological engineers are in hot demand, and it therefore took some time to procure the necessary expertise. By pausing the project early in the construction phase through mutual agreement with the local contractor, Council has avoided costly physical reworks and has therefore avoided any significant cost increases. The project is being managed within budget, with the majority of the budget coming from external sources, not rate funds. Therefore, there is no anticipated financial impost on the ratepayers of East Gippsland.
Thanks, Ms Weigel. CEO, did you have another question?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Mr Gary Smythe, I believe, is here in person, who has a question to ask.
Gary, come and join us. Would you like to make your way up to the microphone? You're comfortable there? Good evening and welcome to the chamber.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly.
Well, this is all in relation to Lot 15 at Riverbend Estate, number 40 Koraleigh View, and the intention of council, I think, is to possibly remove the existing agreement on building outside the current building envelope.
Okay.
Now, a number of people in the area, I think there was 20 objections opposed the building outside the envelope, and for a couple of reasons. Well, there were quite a few reasons. One in particular was the landowner had this intention of running a business out of that shed that he was going to construct outside the envelope, and a lot of that's been resolved, and we believe that it appears that the council has the intention of actually removing the agreement and constructing a new agreement so he can build outside the envelope. My questions basically are, if the council elects to cancel the existing agreement, will the new agreement be A, subject to the public consideration, and will the requirements for envelope building within an envelope be met? In other words, for example, 5 metres from a building, 5 metres from a fence line, because one of the initial application by the landowner was he's going to have a building 21 metres by 14 metres, which is rather extensive, and at one point it was going to be 1.9 metres from the fence line, and I just want to make sure that that's not going to be the case if he does get the exemption to build outside the envelope.
Mr Smythe, thanks very much for your question. I'll put that to the General Manager, Place and Community.
Thank you.
Mr McConnell. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So the revised agreement, the proposal in front of Council tonight is one in relation to cancellation of the existing agreement, but that is coupled with a proposal to enter into a new agreement, which is in effect in the same terms as the existing, but with some slightly modified wording. Now, that modified wording was foreshadowed through the application process, and it specifically adds to the section in relation to building envelopes unless with Council's prior written consent. And so it's our view that the issues associated with the nature of the change have been transparent in the application, and in the recommendation that's being considered tonight, those changes are, the concerns that have been raised have been taken into account, and so in that context there wouldn't be further consultation associated with that new agreement. Secondly, the question in relation to would the requirements of the current envelopes, etc., be applied. So the agreement won't introduce a new building envelope, but will allow, as indicated earlier, the responsible authority or council to consider buildings outside the building envelope, but with council or council's approval. So prior written consent. So in making any recommendations in relation to a request to build outside the envelope, we will have regard to the matters that have been raised by objectors, the site constraints, setbacks from property boundaries and the like, and importantly, the cultural heritage management plan, which has identified areas that need to be protected. So those matters would be considered in any decision or recommendation that council officers are making in relation to allowing a building outside of a nominated building envelope. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr McConnell, thank you. CEO, are there any other questions?
No, there are not, Mayor.
Thanks for that. Are there any public submissions tonight?
No.
In which case, councillors, let's move on to item 2. I don't think there's any notices of motion. Then we can go on to deferred business item 3.1, which is the Economic Development Advisory Committee appointment of members. Mr McConnell, again, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillors, you've been briefed on this matter a couple of times, and so I'll just make a couple of comments to begin with. So the report before you recommends the approval of the charter for the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and also makes recommendations about the appointment of members to the new committee. The members that are recommended for appointment have been identified in 2 ways. Firstly, a number of those members were involved in the focus groups that were helped to develop the economic development strategy, and they were then invited to express interest in becoming part of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and a number did so. Secondly, councillors have reviewed those members along with the gaps and skill requirements of the committee, and have identified a number of other candidates for appointment, and they are listed in the confidential attachment. I do note that that process is really focused on 2 things. One is identifying the key people that address the skills necessary to provide advice to council, particularly in the context of the economic development strategy and its implementation, and that broad focus that the economic development strategy has, but also the need to make these appointments in a timely manner, and so that process has continued. These appointments are proposed to be for 2 years, and it's anticipated that the conclusion of that 2-year period, there would be an expression of interest process for appointment of members beyond that. So, councillors, you have the recommendation before you, both for the approval of the charter and also for appointment of the applicants that are listed in the confidential attachment. I would just note one of the charter, there's an error in section 6. Section 4 outlines what is proposed in terms of the numbers of members, 14 skills-based members and 3 councillors. However, that hasn't been replicated in section 6, which should replicate those same numbers. So to confirm, the charter does set out that there can be up to 14 members and 3 councillors appointed to the committee. Thank you.
Mr McConnell, thank you. Sorry for the flurry of activity over here. We've just got a power issue with a laptop. Councillors, are there any questions of Mr McConnell on this matter? Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr McConnell, could you just reiterate, please, you might have covered this already, but the Charter allows for up to 14 members. At the moment, we don't have those 14 members. By what process would those extra people be approached or appointed, please?
Thank you, Councillor Uri, and through you, Mayor. I think at this stage we would anticipate having further discussions with councillors in terms of any particular members, but there is also the opportunity to engage those members who are appointed to the committee to assist in identifying appropriate candidates that might, again, fill out the skills mix and coverage that would be really valuable in terms of implementation of the economic development strategy.
Thank you.
Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillors, you okay for the moment? You happy to continue with Ben working away? We're right? Okay. We're almost right. Sorry for the distraction. Councillor Buckley, question, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I'm just wanting to seek some confirmation in regards to the membership type. It says there's 2 councillors comprising of the mayor and one other councillor, but I thought there'd been 2 other councillors nominated. This is page 6 of 11. So am I understanding this right?
Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you. So section 4 of the Charter refers to there being 3 councillors, one of which is the mayor, and also up to 14 skills-based members. So the intention is that there is the mayor and 2 other councillors appointed to this committee.
So attachment 3.1.2 says membership type 2 councillors comprising the mayor and one other councillor. Does that need to be amended?
Correct. That was the correction I mentioned in the introduction as in section 6 is the need to update that to be consistent
Good
with
pick up.
section 4.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Buckley.
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Van Diggle, question.
Thanks, Stuart. I'm just wondering how confident we can feel with moving with this process since we didn't go out for public expression of interest. What are the risks that we have in regards to this?
Thank you, Councillor Van Diggle, and through you, Mayor. There's always a balance of matters that need to be considered. I think there are a range of very good candidates that have been identified within that confidential attachment. So I don't think there's a question necessarily in terms of in any way in terms of the quality of those candidates and what they can bring to the table. That said, there may be many other people out there who also can bring good value to and advice to council through the committee. And as I indicated, at this stage, the intention or the balance that was taken was to identify the suitable candidates in the interest of making a timely set of appointments. And that's something that has been an on-balance matter that's been discussed with councillors. And so from then, the proposal would be that in 2 years' time, further appointments would be through an expression of interest process.
Thanks, Councillor Van Diggle. Councillors, are there any other questions of Mr McConnell about this matter? Councillors, there is a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Greason, seconded Councillor Allen. Councillor Greason, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, I think this is a fantastic step towards getting the economic development strategy underway. It's taken quite a while to develop this strategy, and the committee of people that we've chosen to be involved, we need them to be vibrant and clear and strong in their advice to council across all 9 focus areas of the East Gippsland Economic Development Strategy. And I think the Charter and the policy make it clear that, you know, this is not just about those amazing big and medium-sized businesses and industry that we have in East Gippsland that employ many people and create important supply chains in East Gippsland, importing and exporting goods, as well as providing health and education services. But it also involves the very wide range of smaller businesses that communities thrive on in the arts sector, niche food and fibre, tourism, etc., the ones that create life and colour and laughter in the streets and homes of our Shire. The direct appointment of the committee members was necessary to allow us to progress this strategy as soon as possible. The people proposed are all very highly regarded in their fields, and it's really pleasing that they've agreed to be a part of this. The process of direct appointment rather than openly seeking expressions of interest is far from ideal, and there will be other people who wish to be involved who would be very excellent on the committee. But the appointment of this committee is for 2 years, and at that time, in 2025, the aim is for the committee to be appointed through public expressions of interest process in the usual way. So we need to push this along fast now, and to go out for expressions of interest publicly would delay the establishment of this committee by about another 3 months. So I'm very pleased to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Greason, thank you. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd first of all like to acknowledge the mammoth amount of work that has gone into getting us to this stage with this committee. I think we started on this within the first couple of months of this council's term, and the fact that it's taken this long is because we wanted to get it right. And I believe that the people that have participated in the steering committee at the start and of the ones we've identified now to sit on this committee are going to do a fantastic job in identifying the opportunities that exist for this Shire and the people who are looking for, opportunities into the future. So thank you to Stuart and his team. Thank you to everyone that's put their hands up, and should this motion go through, I think that it might be long anticipated, but I think it'll be a very worthwhile committee. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Uri, then Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, because I think what I wanted to say has mostly been covered by Councillors Grayson and Allen. I think their words also reflect the fact that we're all looking forward to actually getting down and starting work with this committee, and also the positive expectations that we all have of this committee in driving forward our really important strategy. I would also like to thank our staff who've put in so much work, particularly Mr McConnell, through getting this together over the last 2 years, but also the councillors who've participated and met many, many times to slog this out. I think it's really interesting that I think we're looking at a bit of a change in the wind when we look at economic development, and I think that's been reflected in the delays and the long discussions that we've had about economic development and what it means now. We're looking to include all those successful businesses that have supported our community in the past, the more traditional ones. But I think we're also looking forward to a future where more people are included. There are elements of consideration of health and well-being generally of people and of equity in the community. So I think it's a very important and exciting time this evening as we look at this this proposal in front of us. Thank you.
Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Look, just a quick comment in regards to the 9 pillars that make up the objectives of what we're trying to achieve. I think that it's just really heartening to see that arts, culture and heritage are on the list there. I think that a community without those highlighted is a very bereft community indeed, and I look forward to seeing some advancements in that area, and I wish the future committee every success in achieving it.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillors, anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, I'd just like to acknowledge again the work that's been done to get to this point, but also in anticipation of the members who we're appointing tonight, who we know will give generously of their time and their expertise, and that's really acknowledged and appreciated. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Looks like it's carried unanimously, CEO. Thank you, councillors. No longer deferred. Councillors, time for some of your reports, councillor and delegates' reports. I'm happy to move to my right here. Councillor Allen, what have you been up to?
Mark. Well, I'll just touch on a couple of things. The week before last, I attended the SEATS conference in Ulladulla, which was the first one under our new CEO, Greg Pullen, who brought great enthusiasm to the role and really revitalised the focus of the group, and I think the change to Greg has been one that's going to be very good over time. One of the main focuses during the two-day meeting was on building back better and resilience, not only through our experience with bushfires and flood, but through southern New South Wales with landslides. And there's areas there that they say will be at least until Christmas till the roads up through the escarpment are reopened, which, you know, this day and age is pretty unusual. But then I suppose you look at our situation at Mount Buller, Buller? Feathertop, where are we?
Bogong High Plains Road,
Bogong.
both sides of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, that's an issue that's really affecting us too. Last Friday, along with the Mayor and Councillor Grecian, Councillor Crook, the CEO, had a really great morning out at Orbost, at Hinnomunjie. And I think everyone that we spoke to out there, and for their hospitality and for their really relaxed way that they discussed issues with us in an honest and open fashion. It was a really, really good meeting. And I think, along with most of the rest of us, last Tuesday night, I attended Dawson's Truss and Timber Yard opening. I'm not sure that the violin company's bagpipes will make them more melodious, but it was a great evening and a great tribute to the Dawson family in general, but to John Dawson for the investment that he's brought into our Shire, into this town where their family business started in 1874, as he likes to tell me that he pipped us by 2 years. So well done, John.
Councillor Allen, thanks for that. Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd just like to mention one thing, and Arthur's already touched on it, that's the Dawson contribution. There's been a massive contribution to East Gippsland made by the Dawson family. I think they're in their sixth generation now since 1874, did you say? 150 years, that is sensational. The company is led by John still. Even though John's in his mid-80s or maybe even a little older, he's still leading it very enthusiastically. They've built the roof truss, they've done the trade centre, they've put a new 30-block industrial estate that's all sold out, and there's a hotel and apartments still to come. So it's a credit to the whole family and to John in particular to see this, and it's wonderful for our region to have the continued support. They haven't moved on like a lot of people may have in their situation. They're one of the major players in hardware in Australia. In fact, they're probably number 2 to Bunnings in Australia for hardware. I think they've got something like 60 stores in all parts of Australia, including Broome and Cairns and elsewhere. So well done, the Dawson family.
Councillor Stowe, thank you. Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. I also had the pleasure of visiting my old hometown of Orbost late last week, where we visited Hinnomunjie Aboriginal Council and their Culture and Environment Park. This area has been under development for several years now, and the change since my last visit was absolutely impressive, and a real tribute to all of those people involved. They've got a cultural trail where visitors can experience bush food, sculptures, and a yarning circle that all now form part of the site. It also has a nursery facility where plants from the local area and beyond are being grown for both retail and for a growing forest restoration market. Their natural resource management arm continues to grow and work with government departments on issues such as feral pigs, deer control, rainforest restoration, with big plans afoot for the future. We also concerningly heard some of their frustrations in dealing with government processes which seem to still fail to adequately consult with them and to capitalise on the challenging nature of forest management. And I'll be speaking further with them about how this situation can improve, I guess, and what role council can play in that space. I attended the Disability Advisory Committee meeting also yesterday, and we had Shane Turner, our Emergency Management Coordinator, also attend the meeting to discuss council's role in emergencies and recovery. The committee really welcomed the information, but were somewhat perplexed to hear, while our council has made good inroads in the establishment of emergency preparedness via the development of local area management plans and upgraded many existing community facilities to bolster a network of neighbourhood safer places, this does not appear to have been done at all locations with disability access in mind, in that the facilities themselves do not necessarily meet equal access guidelines or standards. And despite several of the facilities not being owned by council, this is something that the group feels now needs to be addressed through some kind of audit of the facilities with a disability lens. The committee has also agreed to establish a working group to make recommendations on our health and wellbeing strategy or plan, which I understand will be released for community consultation, I believe, this week. And speaking of health and wellbeing, I'd just like to recognise that today is the first anniversary of the Lismore and Northern New South Wales floods, and acknowledge the work done by both the Lismore and surrounding councils and the hardship felt by those communities impacted by these extreme weather events. Many people in those communities are still without housing, many can't get insurance, and the burden placed on affected communities continues to be unprecedented. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Crook, thank you, and thanks for reminding us of our friends and cousins up there in northern New South Wales and southern Queensland. Councillor Van Diggle.
Thank you. I would have thought that being a young councillor, I wouldn't be dealing with so many elements, but I've had a neck issue for the last week, so I've had to be an apology to a number of things last week. And I've attended a few similar things to other councillors, so I'll put most of it in the minutes, but I just wanted to talk about the Paynesville Music Festival this weekend. Obviously, Paynesville is my neck of the woods again, since I moved back and forth to townships all the time. So I'm back in Paynesville, and it was really nice to see the community being brought together. In the past, it's been on a big stage, and this time there were lots of little gigs at different hospitality venues and the floating tin shed. So it was just really nice to be able to do that again. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to the sponsors, which were the Paynesville Op Shop, East Gippsland Shire Council, the East Gippsland Community Foundation, and the Paynesville Business and Tourism Association. So I was able to attend that, and most of the things were free as well, which I think is great for accessibility. So I just wanted to give a shout out. I think we should keep doing those things, and the rest of the things will be in the minutes.
Councillor Van Diggle, thank you. Councillor Buckley, I'm sort of sliding across and you're next in the middle there. What have you been up to?
Thank you, Mayor. I attended a leadership conference that was provided by the MAV in Melbourne. A ministerial address was given by Melissa Horn. Her portfolio includes Minister for Local Government, Ports, Freights, Consumer Affairs and Gaming of Liquor Regulation. Some of the things that I attended were new media politics, discussing the changing landscapes of politics and the media, and the importance of listening to local voices and councillors at the local level to be able to build trust. We covered democracy, respect and trust, ethical leadership at the local level, and discussed the importance of acting with integrity and without bias in the public interest, and the challenges of local governance, impartiality and public trust, and the core principles of codes of conduct. There was an interactive agency panel about strengthening the integrity of Victorian local government, which councillors got to ask questions to the Deputy Commissioner, Deputy Ombudsman and Chief Municipal Inspector. It was a great discussion that covered topics that are close to my heart, which are accountability, transparency and integrity in the local government sector. I attended a workshop on running the gauntlet of political accountability and good governance. I found this a very interesting session that gave me skills of how to identify red flags and risk to deliver our political remit whilst empowering the council executive. I believe Andrew Douglas, the presenter, would be a welcome guest to East Gippsland Shire, and I urge councillors to consider a workshop and invite Andrew to speak with us to ensure we are shining a magnifying glass on our operations and highlight leadership tools and rules to protect councillors and our organisation. My favourite was the ending to the event, which was an interactive bringing you the best you to the leadership legacy by Dr. Louise Malia, who was a communication and leadership expert. It was very engaging and a fun way to end an important learning and networking experience. I also attended the Rural Councils Victoria meeting. There was a change in office bearers' positions and we welcomed Mayor Laura Binks into the Deputy Chair position. Many topics were covered, such as economic community growth, rates, reviews, social housing, council difficulty in delivering capital works programs, and health. Strategic partnerships re public land management as a priority in our strategic pillars, which is still in its draft form, is soon to be finalised. Political priority issues were costs of living, skills and workforce, land use and planning, and housing affordability. Clear asks have been identified and will be presented in meetings for the relevant ministers. I also attended Timbertown's meeting, and the next AGM will be on the 17th of August. Discussions re carbon credits and what that means for the native timber industry were a topic of discussion. The Opal closure was discussed and the 250 job losses at Maryvale and the transition out of the industry into a newly formed SEC renewable energy sector and how that would work, as it's a completely different skill set. The issue of wood chops now being no longer possible because of no supply is a sad reflection of some of the political things that are happening in the native timber industry. The question of no replacement timber supply when proposed closures of native timber industry to address the shortfall, as no plantations have been planted. The issue was raised that the timber transition is complex and works on a model of smart specialisation system, and the difficulties working through the bureaucracy and concern was raised of how much money will find its way to towns and how much is being lost in administration. I raised the issue of what is happening to the seed growing facility that was first announced for Nowa and then relocated to Bairnsdale. Information is being sought re that matter. It's an interesting fact that sawmills employ more people than the Opal operation, who has received a generous government financial package, yet haulage contractors are being omitted from the transition and may have already left for New South Wales and Tasmania. This leaves a huge economic hole for the Gippsland and should be a great concern for us all. And in closing, I'll quickly go through the stakeholders meeting in Omeo. Many topics were discussed. Some of them was the support worker, Helen, a district support worker who was praised, and there was a concern about who would replace her when the funding runs out. The soft opening of the mountain bike trails and the formation of a mountain bike club. And there's issues around maintenance of the trails as well as need for state government funding for emergency management. It was raised that there's only $70,000 of weed allocation for the whole of our Shire from the state government, which is dismal and should be addressed. And also concerns about the capital gains windfall tax and the impediments that would raise for potential developers, which is high on the agenda for Rural Councils Victoria. And I'll just leave it there. The rest can be submitted in the minutes.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillor White.
No, Mayor, nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor White, thank you. Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I wanted to state publicly that over the last few months and due to a close family member having some health issues, I've needed to consider carefully my day-to-day priorities and absent and be absent more than I would have hoped from some council appointments and community visits. This situation is likely to continue for the next 4 to 6 months, I expect. I have appreciated enormously the support given and offered by the Mayor, my councillor colleagues and the CEO in particular. I believe that despite the requirement for ongoing flexibility, I can continue to be an effective councillor and indeed wish to continue to participate as much as possible in council matters during this time. Over the last 4 weeks, I have really appreciated the flexibility offered by being able to participate remotely in council meetings and briefings, and I wanted to particularly thank our IT staff for making all this possible. This capacity was developed, of course, during COVID, but we continue to see benefits that occasional remote participation can offer in other circumstances as well. For example, when we're unwell, or to reduce travel time, travel risk, expense and emissions. The expertise of our IT staff in setting up the systems and their efficiency and courtesy in troubleshooting difficulties which arise during meetings is really impressive, and particularly for me currently, it's very much appreciated. Mr. CEO, I wonder if you would please pass on my particular and sincere thanks to them and to that team. As one of the councillor reps on the Audit and Risk Committee, I was able to join the meeting on Monday the 20th of February from Dover in Tasmania. Of course, as normal practice, a report of that meeting will have been presented to the councillor group, and that was done this afternoon. Whilst in Tasmania, I did visit Mona, and I just wanted to say a few words about Mona, but I'm not going to say it out loud. I'll just put it in my written report to be included in the minutes. The relevance for East Gippsland of that visit, I think, is just to highlight the undoubted importance of philanthropy in making a difference through the arts. Happily, I also spent 2 nights in Derby in northeast Tasmania, famous, of course, for its world-class mountain bike trails and the transformation that this development has brought the town and the community. As councillors, we've had many briefings and discussions about our own Omeo mountain bike precinct. However, I found it enlightening to see and experience some of where the inspiration came from for that development and what economic benefits can follow. I was actually lucky enough to bump into 2 people who were intimately involved in the Derby project, including Glenn Jacobs from World Trails, and they both spoke glowingly about the East Gippsland delegation and shared some of their key learnings in delivering the project, all of which our officers and contractors will be well aware of already, I'm sure. Some of those things were, once 85 kilometres of trails are built, people will start to come and stay for a week. And just to remind people that we have planned 120 or a little over 120 kilometres of trails. It's really important to have airline connections. Not sure what we can do about this, but for Derby, it's 1.5 hours from Launceston. The mix of the trails should be about 15% green, which are the easy ones, which I tried out, 70% blue, which are the challenging ones, and 15% black, which are the expert ones. Maintenance of the trails is critical, and I'm sure Councillor Buckley mentioned this. That'll be, I really look forward to the discussions about what that means for us in Omeo. I'm sure that's been considered already. And the need to provide activities for all ages and abilities. In Derby, they've moved from the locals being the majority of visitors to now national and international visitors being the majority. And they're about to host, once again, the World Championships in Derby. So just a really interesting project, and I look forward to seeing some of those developments in our own area. Thanks, Mayor.
Great, thanks for that, and I'm glad you had a crack at riding at Derby.
Yes, electric bike, which
On an e-bike
also
as well.
makes a difference.
Well done. Councillor Greason.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. On the 9th of February, I attended the Shrine of Remembrance touring exhibition at the Forge Theatre and Arts Hub. This is a deeply moving exhibition of art, sculpture, poetry and music, and it's called Change Forever, Legacies of Conflict. I'm hoping that the Mayor will talk a little bit about it as well, because I wasn't able to get to the earlier talk about refugees. I attended, this is not a council-linked event, but I'm going to talk about it. I attended a really good education program called Trauma Informed Practice, run by the Blue Knot Foundation. I learnt a lot from it and consider its approach to be applicable to many, many people in our community who are impacted by climate-linked disasters, family violence, and the long-term impacts of poverty and mental illness in families, etc. And in that sense, it's very relevant to my role as a councillor. And I think we can all learn from these approaches. As I was already in Melbourne, I stayed for the St Kilda Festival. I like St Kilda, I have to say, but I'm really keen that East Gippsland have festivals. We've seen how amazing the Winter Festival has been for the past 2 years. I'd like to see us having multicultural festivals and supporting our music festivals strongly so that they can grow and become as iconic to East Gippsland as the floating tin shed is to Paynesville. The St Kilda Festival is huge and boasts a huge stage on the foreshore. And the first day was a celebration of First Nations music, culture and community. And the second had some of Australia's biggest names performing. They must spend millions on it, and it draws $500,000 people every year. So we can't aim for that level, that height, but we can do a lot here given the creative energies throughout the region. I also attended the new Dalson's complex opening, so I won't repeat what the others have said, just how impressed I am that the Dalson brothers, who are all there, aged 82 to 95, all look so fit and well. But I was really impressed with their mantra of the importance of the culture of the organisation, so the relationship with employees, customers and business partners, which they believe, and the respect and care, creating the relationships that enabled them to survive COVID and thrive. So it's very impressive. The Mudgee Aboriginal Council farm on Bonang Road too, I know there's been a fair bit said about it, but I'll just add to it. Tammy Bundle, the CEO, Nick Martin and Auntie Aileen Blackburn talked with us about their plans for the farm. And their nursery is extraordinary, and what they're doing is, apart from growing plants for East Gippsland CMA, they're also looking to grow rare and endangered plants from seeds that they've found. Their plans for the cultural places for the men and the women are evolving beautifully and are already special places. And when they're finished and the trees and bushes have grown and the sculptures and other artworks embedded in the landscape, it will be fantastic, a really important place for the community. So, as has been said before, they talked about the importance of being included in decision-making that affects them and provides opportunities for work for the people, and particularly referring to all levels of government. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Greason, thank you for that report, and I'd like to echo your comments about Mudgee and what a great day it was to go there. Councillors, it's been a happy and sad time for me, and I'd just like to acknowledge the work of the Deputy Mayor in holding the fort while my family and I went through some sorry business, so thanks for looking after that and giving me the time to do that. I, to a point, attended, as Councillor Greason said, the Change Forever project at the Forge Theatre. A really amazing project hosted by the Shrine of Remembrance, a touring exhibition. It presented stories of migrants from war-torn countries and recent veterans from overseas service. It's very important, the convergence of those refugees and serving soldiers, and their stories are very similar. From opposite sides of a war. And that exhibition reflected the range and depth of experience in conflict and post-war life. There were stories of migrants who've settled in Australia from war-torn countries, and they were presented beside those of recent veterans from overseas service in the ADF. It was a really moving exhibition and explored the impact of global and civil conflict in changing lives and shaping contemporary Australia. Also there was Fred Smith. Now Fred Smith is an author and a musician, and he joined a floor talk in presenting the exhibition, but Fred sang a couple of songs. He also performed a number of concerts while he was here in East Gippsland. I hope some of you got a chance to attend them, but I bought a couple of his books, Dust of Uruzgan and The Sparrows of Kabul, and I urge you to read them, and we should get copies for our library CEO. They are real must-reads of what seems to be a bit of a forgotten war that our soldiers fought in for a long time. The Ag Sector Advisory Committee met, and every time I meet I'm reminded what an incredible group of people they are and what knowledge and dedication and commitment they have. And my notes here say I learn something new every time I meet that group, in fact, many things. The Audit and Risk Committee met, and their report is probably noted elsewhere, but the new chair, Celeste Gregory, was elected, and we noted the work of the outgoing chair, Stephen Patterson. And we welcomed the returning but new member, Jason Hellier. Now, councillors, One Gippsland, and I'm very proud to announce that I've been elected chair of One Gippsland, and what an enormous honour and privilege that is. The other new members on this group include Councillor Nathan Hersey, Deputy Chair and Mayor from South Gippsland, Anne-Marie McCabe, and Anne-Marie is the Mayor of Baw Shire, Ms Jan Fitzgerald, Chair of Destination Gippsland, and Mr Paul Buckley, Chair of TAFE Gippsland. And that gives you an idea of the representation on that group. It's a really important group. And when you think that One Gippsland represents and advocates for the needs of Gippsland from peri-urban Melbourne and Phillip Island right through to Mallacoota and up to the high country, it's a very important group that we are privileged to be able to be part of. And I acknowledge in our discussions with lobbying for that chair position, I spoke at length with the CEO because there is additional administrative work as a result of us taking on that chair, that we share that chair really, and I'm very proud that we have that position. It's been a number of years since we've chaired One Gippsland. It may even go back a couple of councils, I think, CEO, to former Councillor Neil, when Peter Neal was mayor. So that's a while ago. It's terrific. But some of the hot issues around One Gippsland include offshore renewable energy, our position paper, the offshore wind farm that's particularly important for Wellington Shire but seems to be creeping further east, renewable energy education and training opportunities, and this is hot on the topic for TAFE Gippsland and Fed Uni. The draft Latrobe Valley and Gippsland transition plan was a topic that was well discussed and presented by Chris Buckingham, the CEO of Latrobe Valley Authority. And so it goes on. But it's a very important group with representation from Food and Fibre Gippsland, Destination Gippsland, TAFE Gippsland, Glawak and Fed Uni, as well as the 6 local government areas. Councillors, as noted, I also attended the Hinnomunjie meeting, and it was a very important meeting to go to. And my notes here say it was a great chance to yarn and have a fair and frank discussion. And I think that probably does sum it up well. Councillors, once again, thank you for your representation and your work. It's very important that you do that. Let's move on, councillors, to item 5.1, Assets and Environment, and item 5.1.1, which is a contract 2023-1503, supply of plant and equipment for emergency response and recovery works. Just navigate your way through to that if you would, please, councillors. There it is, I've got it. General Manager, Assets and Environment. Ms Weigel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, Mayor, councillors, before you is a contract, which is a supply contract or a panel of supply contract based on schedules of rates as we've discussed, to supply plant and equipment for emergency responses and recovery works. Councillors, as you all well know, with almost 3,000 kilometres of road, 200 bridges and similar structures, we have a lot of plant and equipment in our roads area and around that is required if there is a time of emergency. Unfortunately, in the last few years, East Gippsland has had its share of emergencies where we've been required to respond to fires and floods, and that's often meant the need to bring in additional contractors to make sure that we can work through the renewal and the replacement of roads and other infrastructure in a very prompt and responsive way. To do so, we really often need to bring in extra contractors, and that is the purpose of the contract before you this evening. It's to look at having a panel of suppliers that we can reach out to and engage on those unfortunate times when we need to respond to emergencies in a rapid way and in a way that is beyond the capacity of our normal contractors and our in-house crews. Councillors, before you is a report. It's supported by a confidential attachment which outlines the tender evaluation panel's recommendations and assessments. And the recommendation before you is to appoint a number of contractors to that panel of providers. With me this evening, I also have Paul Rooney, who is the Acting Manager of Works, who is available to answer any technical questions. So thank you, Mayor. We're happy to
Mrs Weigel, thank you. Mr Rooney, good evening. Welcome to the council meeting and thanks for being here. Councillors, are there any questions of Ms Weigel? Councillor Crook, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Ms Weigel. I notice we're considering the appointment of 12 different contractors. I just wonder, have we considered full sort of geographic scope of the region? I know one of the issues in times gone by has been that contractors haven't been able to get to isolated communities. Have we got some contractors in or close to isolated communities from this suggested panel?
Thank you, and I'll refer councillors to the confidential attachment 1, which gives a little more detail about each of the contractors we're recommending. And you'll see from that that indeed we have considered having a geographic spread so that we have some in our remote areas that can be called upon at short notice and can get to an area quickly. We also have a number that are perhaps outside the area, just to give us that capacity if we need more contractors than can be supplied by the local area.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Crook, thank you. Ms Weigel. Councillors, are there any other questions? I see none. Then, councillors, there is a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Greason. Councillor Greason, you're moving the motion and I'll ask you to look on the screen. Just stand by, councillors. I'll do this way. So, councillor, just could you have a look and confirm the details of the screen on the screen are accurate and that you would like to populate them with, and you will need to read the 12 contractors that you wish to populate A to L with, if you would please.
Thank you.
And then I'll ask if there is a seconder.
Thank you. So, as I read it, everything in points 1 to 7 are correct, and the names of the contractors that have been...
If you wouldn't mind, please.
That will be appointed are A, Bairnsdale Road Services Proprietary Limited, Jamie V Ingram Proprietary Limited, Cranes Asphalting and Bitumen Sealing Proprietary Limited, Scroop Stephen Mark Trading as Stephen Scroop, Middleton Lee Proprietary Limited trading as Cal Civil, Brunts Harvesting Proprietary Limited trading as Can Quarries, the trustee for BC Walsh Family Trust trading as Ground Technique, Whelan's Group Investments Proprietary Limited, Paul Volk Contracting Proprietary Limited, LJ&J Holdings Proprietary Limited trading as Eastern Vegetation Contracting, Coyote Contracting Proprietary Limited and Maluka Group Proprietary Limited. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. I'll just ask Vanessa to pop those up on the screen and confirm what you can see there. And if you're comfortable, then do we have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Crook. We have a seconder then. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, just to say that it's essential that we have these people lined up and willing to step in when there's an emergency or a flood or some damage done to infrastructure or roads or drainage, etc., and that they can step in very quickly and save as much discomfort and inconvenience as possible for the community. Thank you.
Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion? No? All said. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak to or against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. Councillor Van Diegel.
I was wondering if I could please put a motion to alter the agenda so that the item listed at 5.3.1 can be moved forward to now, because I recognise there's someone in the gallery that's probably waiting just for that item and it's near the end. So I'm just wondering if...
Councillor Van Diggle, so there's a motion on the table to alter the agenda and move 5.3.1 into the agenda to now. Would there be a seconder for that? Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, it's just about the section 173, and I recognise that there's someone in the gallery and they might not want to stay for the remainder of the meeting, so if everyone's happy to move that forward.
Councillor Crook, did you want to speak to the motion? Is the motion opposed, councillors? Anybody else like to speak for or against it? So we're moving this forward. That's the motion that's on the table. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, councillors. Thanks for that procedural motion. It is carried. Thanks, John. So if we can move to item 5.3.1, thank you, councillors. Just navigate your way into your devices to that. Mr McConnell, happy to proceed. And I see we've got Mr Richardson and Mr Pringle online as well. Perfect.
Right. So thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you report regarding the ending and replacement of the Section 173 agreement for land at 40 Koraleigh View, Nicholson, the officer's recommendation is that Council agrees to end the agreement and notes that a new agreement will be registered on title. Some of the key points for your consideration. So the proposal relates, or is triggered, I must say, from a proposal to build a shed outside of an existing building envelope on the property. The building envelope, which is reflected in the 173 agreement, is significantly more of a constraint than on most other sites in the area due to the existence of an area of cultural heritage sensitivity in the middle of the site, which needs to be avoided and protected. The proposed shed would be outside the building envelope, but also would be outside or not impinge on the area of cultural heritage sensitivity. A new Section 173 agreement is proposed, which would enable Council to provide, in effect, a miscellaneous consent for the proposed shed, in effect to approve construction of a building outside of the building envelopes that have been nominated. Note that any such consent would still be subject to consideration of the range of constraints on the site, including relationship to the neighbouring sites, and also as mentioned earlier, the cultural heritage sensitivity area. So the proposal and the recommendation before you is considered to be consistent with the requirements of the Act and the obligations of Council when considering such requests. And Mayor, as you pointed out, Mr Pringle and Mr Richardson are on the line tonight to assist with any queries that councillors may have. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Mark. Stuart, if this 173 removal was approved tonight, before anything could be built on that area, it would still be subject to a building permit, is that correct?
So I'll ask possibly to confirm in a moment, but so if we're talking about the construction of a shed at the rear of the property, the normal building permit requirements would apply. A planning permit generally wouldn't be required. I'll ask Martin to confirm that, but there is this consent that we propose in the new agreement just to approve, in a sense, the location of any shed outside of the building envelopes.
So at that stage, the distance from boundaries and that would be or laid down, is that correct?
Yep. So those issues can be addressed at that time of consideration of the consent by council officers.
Thank you.
Martin, did you want to add anything further to that?
Thanks, Mayor, through you. And yes, Stuart's right. The consent process is not a planning permit, but it's a statutory consent that would be offered. And in the report, we've indicated that that consent would be considered based on ensuring that the appropriate setbacks are maintained. We would propose an informal consultation process with the neighbours to ensure that there aren't any issues. And yes, of course, the building will require a building permit.
Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillors, are there any other questions? Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand that this process has received, I think it was 20 objections. From what we've heard tonight, it doesn't sound that many of those objections are in fact opposed to the removal of the 173 agreement and actually pertain more to the construction of a very large shed and potential commercial activity on that site. What assurances would we have if we were to approve the removal of the 173 agreement that the objectors' fears won't in fact come true?
Councillor Crook, thank you for that question.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Through you, Mayor, I might ask Martin to respond to, because I think it relates to the uses that are permitted within the zone and those matters. So I'll ask Martin to respond to that.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Councillor Crook. And through you, Mayor, yes. Look, the objectors, and there was a mixed bag of objections. Some people who, several of the people were opposed to the proposal because of concerns about the possible use of the shed. So we need to be clear that in approving a shed on any property, we do not imply an approval for the use of that shed for a business. And in this case, there have been suggestions that this person may be wishing to run some kind of repair business for vehicles. We've been provided with information by the applicant that that is not the intention, and it will be absolutely clear in this process that this amendment or this removal of the agreement and the new agreement in place does not imply any approval for the use of that shed for an activity which is prohibited in the zone. No one can carry out mechanical repairs or restoration in a zone of this type, and that's been made clear to the applicant, and if that was to be the case, then the normal enforcement action would be undertaken. Other objectors were concerned about the possible location of the shed in terms of impact on their amenity, and thus we propose to put in place in the revised agreement a process whereby council consent effectively will be required for the location, and we will assess that location in terms of setbacks and potential impact on neighbours. Thank you.
Mr Richardson, thanks for that. Councillor Crook. Are there any other questions? Councillor Greason. Oh, sorry, did you have another question?
I just might have a follow-up if that's
okay.
okay.
Sure. Stand by, Councillor Greason.
It just relates to the properties in the surrounding area who may also have such 173 agreements. It's been suggested to me that removing this one would be unfair because others have applied and haven't been allowed to do that. Is there any way that changing the 173 agreement on this property would affect the capacity for other residents to apply for the same process and have their 173 agreements removed?
No, it is possible for any person who has a Section 173 agreement affecting their property to apply to have that agreement ended or amended. And I think, again, it's indicated in the report that we would entertain such proposals. This property, of course, is somewhat unique in that it has a large section of land subject to cultural heritage sensitivity. But if any other owner was able to advance the case, as this owner has, that if there was a need to revise the Section 173 agreement to accommodate an outbuilding, then we would consider it on the same terms as we have this one.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thanks, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason.
Thank you, Mayor. As you just mentioned, Martin, there are culturally sensitive sites in this area, and there is a cultural heritage management plan in place. Would the removal of the Section 173 in any way impact on that plan? And can you confirm that the cultural heritage sites that are there will continue to be protected? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And through you, Mayor, I might pass this on to my subject matter expert, Mr Pringle.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for the question, Councillor Grecian, and through you, Mayor. Certainly, our focus in assessing if this motion were to be passed and the agreement were to be amended with the wording of allowing council's consent, we certainly would be mindful of that area and the restrictions that are imposed through the Cultural Heritage Management Plan. We would consider in any proposal what impacts the proposal would have on cultural significance, artefacts, scattered remains, etc. So we've already started that discussion with the applicant through the assessment process to make sure that we're not making the wrong decision, and we are making sure that any development going forward will not negatively impact on those areas.
Councillor Greason, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Councillors, are there any other questions? Thanks, councillors. In which case there is a recommendation, councillors. Do we have a motion? Councillor Uri, do I have a seconder? Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly to say that I think all the I appreciate the questioning from councillors. I also appreciate the question we had earlier from the member in the gallery. And through the processes, the planning consultation meeting and so on, I think that as far as I can tell, all the concerns have been addressed, and I feel quite confident in supporting this officer recommendation this evening.
Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that I think that I agree with Councillor Uri and that the cultural heritage values are protected in this development, and I commend the officers for finding their way in this and hope everyone is happy.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Thanks, Councillor Van Diggel, for bringing that forward. Councillors, do we need a motion to go back to the agenda, the normal position in the agenda? No, I don't think so. Councillors, I'm happy that we now navigate our way back to item 5.1.2, which is the contract 2023-1478 heritage listed Hinnomunjie Timber Truss Bridge structural stabilisation.
Mayor, may I move a motion here?
Please, what is your motion?
That the report be deferred to a future council meeting to allow councillors time to further consider the recommendations proposed, given the significant financial impost that this tender would present council.
Councillor Stowe, thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Allen. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. We all know it's about the Hinnomunjie Bridge up at Omeo. This bridge has been listed as a heritage bridge because it is said to be the second oldest timber truss bridge in Victoria. Its value is therefore primarily to the state of Victoria rather than to the Shire of East Gippsland. Council has received a grant of approximately $2,000 from the Victorian Government's Living Heritage Grant Program to support these works. However, the cost of the works is estimated at 10 times this value and likely to go higher. Given this, the Deputy Mayor has written to the Minister for Planning and our local Member for Parliament, Tim Bull, has made representations to the Minister on the matter. This presentation has stressed the financial burden the repairs would place on Council for an asset that is an extremely remote area and serves no functional role, having been replaced with a concrete structure some years ago. Based on this representation, I understand that officers met with senior staff from Heritage Victoria this morning. They have indicated they recognise the significant increase in costs across the industry, and the Living Heritage Program applies the principle that projects should not impose a significant financial burden on applicants. Heritage Victoria, therefore, has indicated they will support a reduction in the scope of works or staging of the project to fit within the available budget. Given this position and the ability for Council to now reduce the scope of works, it is appropriate for this matter to be deferred to allow the scope to be adjusted. I'd finally like to thank Heritage Victoria for giving consideration to reviewing their earlier demands, and also the Honourable Tim Bull for his intervention there. It was much appreciated.
Councillor Stowe, thanks for that. Councillor Allen, did you want to speak to the matter?
Thank you, Mark. Only to add that I think we, as a council, should be grateful to the Minister for the quick reaction that we got to that letter, which only went, I think, last week.
Very good.
Yeah, so I think we need to acknowledge that there was action taken very quickly on that letter, and also to thank Tim Bull for his contribution in renewing discussions with Heritage Victoria on this.
Councillor Allen, thanks. So, councillors, we have a deferral motion. Is that deferral motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion to the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Buckley, you wanted to speak to or against the motion. Go ahead. Thanks.
Look, I'll speak for the motion, but I do it with apprehension. Some of the comments made by Councillor Stowe I completely disagree with. Although it is a remote area, this bridge has great heritage value. It does bring many a tourist down that neck of the woods. And so I would like to, state that those, I clearly do not agree with Councillor Stowe's comments. However, I understand the economic impost, and that I think that it's been very good of that we can have the opportunity to stagger the staging of the project, and I will support it wholeheartedly, as would many in the high country. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to or against the motion to defer? Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Business excellence, councillors. We're moving on to item 5.2.1, and this is the Council Plan Progress Report, Q2 2022-2023. Mr Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillors, before you is a report titled the Council Plan Progress Report for Q2 in the financial year 2022/23. The Q2 report covers the reporting period from 1st of October to the 31st of December 2022 and provides a high-level summary of the major initiatives, strategic indicators and actions that were listed in the annual action plan for 22/23. Councillors, you'll be aware the annual action plan is a companion document to the Council Plan 21/25, as it identifies the actions that the organisation will take to implement the Council Plan over the year. The major initiatives listed in the annual action plan highlight the actions that represent significant high priorities. For Q2, councillors, 6 of the 9 major initiatives are on schedule, with 3 recorded as behind schedule. Some key highlights of the report, councillors, is firstly the culture and creativity strategy was finalised and released for public feedback. A discussion paper for the housing and settlement strategy was released for public feedback also. The first draft of the East Gippsland Sporting Facilities Plan was developed, and preparations for the development of the East Gippsland Marine and Coastal Plan have commenced. Also, 7 applications were received for 2 program openings within the Pathways to Growth program. And finally, work has commenced on the development of the Occupational Health and Safety Management System. For those items that are currently behind schedule, some of the reasons for those include, with respect to the Reconciliation Action Plan, that was delayed as a result of a withdrawal of a consultant that had already been engaged. To note, though, a new consultancy has been engaged, and work is starting to commence on that plan. Council's progress on a climate risk analysis has been stalled also by an unsuccessful funding application. However, councillors, you'll be pleased to know that we're seeking alternate funding as and when that might be available. And lastly, the customer experience strategy and the implementation of some of the actions within that strategy have also been delayed with respect to staff being channelled into the Civica project implementation, which will go live in March 2023. And I expect staff will then be rescheduled back into the customer experience strategy actions. Councillors, with me tonight is Bethany Saxon, who is the Corporate Planning and Performance Officer, who is here to answer any of your questions if you have any.
Mr Cannizzaro, thank you. Bethany Saxon, welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. Councillors, we have that report in front of us. Are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Greason.
Thank you, Mayor. When I first looked at this, I did think it was a little bit disappointing that the Reconciliation Action Plan and the customer experience improvements and the climate risk analysis were behind schedule, but the reasons for that are unavoidable, and clearly we will catch up. And given that in the scheme of things, you know, we're doing very well, between 73% and 94% of the plan's actions are on schedule. When do you think we will catch up with those three major initiatives?
Thank you. Councillor Greason, through you, Mayor. The Reconciliation Action Plan is currently working up a time frame for completion, so at this stage I can't provide that complete answer for you. Certainly in the next update we'll be able to give you an update on that. With respect to the climate risk analysis and funding arrangements, again, when funding's available, we don't control that, but certainly we are doing our darndest to find funding to enable us to do that. I think very important piece of work. As you know, that is also an item on the Audit Risk Committee agenda as well, so very important. And with the customer experience strategy, whilst it's behind schedule, I must add, it's at around 70-75% complete and up to date, but we're just a tad behind. My view is by 30 June 23, we'll have completed or near to complete the 22-23 actions identified in the customer experience strategy.
Thank you.
Councillor Greason, thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor Stowe, you got your microphone on. Is that indicative
sorry, Mayor, my mistake.
That's all right. Councillor Uri.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, if I may, please, Mr Cannizzaro, about the climate risk analysis. I believe that there was some work being done to scope the content of that work, what it was going to include and whatnot. Obviously, it could be a very big piece of work. Is that ongoing, that scoping piece?
I'm just going to refer to Fiona Weigel, General Manager of Assets and Environment, who'll have an update.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yes, Councillor Uri, we've certainly started to scope that work. We've looked at what that means in terms of internal analysis and external analysis. I know that the Audit and Risk Committee were keen to look at what that meant for our business preparedness, as well as looking at what that means for our community and our environment. So we've also started to look at the piece of work. As you know, we did a trial with some areas of Malakuta. So we've actually started to look at how we can apply that data. So even before we get to the full extent of the Shire, looking at how we'll use the data to inform internal and external decision making. So I believe that both the scope and the use of the data is progressing.
Okay, thank you. So councillors will see this perhaps before or after we've sourced some funding to do it, or can you tell me when and how that will happen, through which channel?
So I think from memory we're bringing the pilot that we've done from Malakuta to Council to show you, just as we showed it to the Audit and Risk Committee. Yep. So we can do that prior to knowing whether we've got the funding for the entire program. The program was part of a preparedness application that was put together through emergency management and sustainability. So it was one of the components, and I believe that we should know about that funding before the end of financial year. So the plan is to make sure we have everything ready and the scope ready for slotting the money in and getting going.
Yep. Terrific, thanks. And I know we always focus on the things that are a little bit behind schedule, but obviously there's a lot of great work being done in the rest of the, delivering all the rest of the actions.
That's right. It's easy to get caught in that deficit sort of approach, isn't it? No, thank you. Councillor Buckley, you had a question.
Look, it was just in regards to this major initiative. I'm just asking, I don't really understand how you can implement a climate risk analysis. How does that actually work? Because it's sort of based on a guess or a model, or what, we're going to be putting funds into this analysis, and I just don't understand what it's going to achieve or how it actually works. Stand by. We've got two officers who are prepared to answer. Mr. Cannizzaro.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. I think when Fiona, General Manager Assets and Environment, provides that that modelling that was in conjunction with the CSIRO and the piece of work that was done by them and us on Mallacoota, that will answer a lot of your questions, I think, and potentially your concerns around how we might be able to apply that modelling to our various townships. But certainly the first piece of work with Mallacoota was presented to the Audit Risk Committee, I'm going to say 4 months ago, approximately, was received well, and that will help us to inform actions to address climate risk. And obviously that would depend on actions that might emanate from that, and obviously budget availability going forward as well.
Thank you, Mr. Cannizzaro. So we'll be giving reports on how this will work, in due process, and we can ask questions accordingly.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when the scheduled modelling will be presented to the councillor group, but certainly in the next few months, I would suggest.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Mr. Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any other questions? Councillors, there is a recommendation on this excellent report. Let me just navigate my way to it. Do I have a motion? Councillor Van Diggel. A seconder, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Van Diggel, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't have much to say except for that I always enjoy receiving these reports because I think it shows that council is lots more than just rates, roads and rubbish. And it's obviously a good way to hold ourselves accountable. So I always enjoy seeing it. It's a really long document, but it just shows the breadth of work that we do here at council. So thank you.
Councillor Van Diggel. Councillor Stowe.
Yes, look, it's a massive amount of work that's being undertaken by the Shire, in excess of $100 million a year, and it really takes a lot of effort by the staff and the contractors to do that, and they're to be commended. We're looking at the results of this, and there's an awful lot of green there, an awful lot of on-schedule stuff there, so well done, everybody.
Councillor Stowe, thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak to or against the motion? Councillors, I'd just like to add once again that I think the work of the comms unit and the team who put together the report should always be acknowledged. To be able to provide an accessible report with so much detail, those who are both textual and visual learners will get a lot out of a report like this, and it's just delightful to see the images in there, and they capture the scope of and diversity of work that happens in the Shire. So it should be congratulated. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried unanimously. Councillors, let's move on to item 5.2.2, which is the councillors' representational register, and this is still with you, Mr. Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled the Council Representation Register, which is seeking adoption of the updated council representation register from 2020 / to 2024 for both the internal committees and external organisations. Key points of the report tonight, councillors, for you to consider are: the representation register is reviewed annually post the statutory meeting, which occurred on the 25th of October 2022. Council is represented on a range of internal and external committees, reference groups, industry groups, forums and other local and local organisations as part of Council's advocacy program. Representation on committees and organisations is guided by the Council representation policy. Some key amendments that you will note in the table, councillors. Amendments to the register include, after the annual review, include the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Council representatives have been nominated. The Marina Consultative Committee, the continuation of the committee, and one councillor representative, you'll note in the table attachment, and that will be pending a future council decision. The inclusion of the Youth Ambassador Committee representative, which was endorsed by Council on the 5th of April 2022, has been included. Removal of the Border Representatives Reference Group and Canberra Region Joint Organisation, given that Council is no longer a member of these entities. And also the removal of the Native Timber Task Force, as Council is no longer participating in this entity. Tonight, councillors, with me is Alba Alling, Manager of Governance, who is available to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you, Mayor. The report is presented.
Cannizzaro, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Crook, then Councillor Buckley.
The National Timber Council body...
Task Force?
No, not the task force. I haven't got the name in front of me right here. No, the adjunct to Timber Towns, National Timber Councils Association.
Yep.
I feel that that's not good value for money. I don't feel that that committee has done anything to represent our interests in past years. We requested some information.
Do you have a question?
The question is, do we have to remain a member of that association? Or rather, why are we remaining a member of that association when it doesn't provide advocacy?
Mr Cannizzaro or Ms Alling?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Crook, and through you, Mayor. Remembering, councillors, this is your representation schedule, so we'll be guided by you with respect to value or otherwise of being a member of any of those committees or associations or groups.
And our representation thereon.
And your representation.
Yep.
Okay.
I think, did you want to ask that question of the CEO in terms of our membership, or CEO,
yes,
do you have...
my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a function of our member of Timber Towns. By becoming a member of Timber Towns, we're also obliged to be a member of this other organisation. But when we've sought, as a council group, further information on this organisation, it appears that they haven't been active for quite some time. Now, I could go back into the specifics of that, but suffice to say, it's costing us $2,750 a year to be a member, and I fail to see what we're getting for that money. So I would like us to consider not continuing to be a member of that association, seeing as they don't seem to actually function.
Through you, Mayor, and I might refer to Alba if there's some specific technical information. I do believe that there is a connection between the Timber Towns and then the national body. It's a bit like MAV and ALGO, if you like. You know, one actually goes with the other. But at the end of the day, my view would be that council can choose what membership it is part of and what membership it pays. Noting the concern about the currency, if you like, of the information that's on the website. I have asked staff just to flag when the next membership renewal comes in, so that council can consider whether it wants to renew that or not at the time of when that happens. I can't give you the exact time, but it does look like it's, from the information I have, it looks like it's a financial year membership. So there would be somewhere within that, within that sort of before or after the sort of end of June date.
So that would probably be the appropriate time to have those considerations.
It may well do. And, and
Okay.
the other thing I would flag with councillors is it may be something that we can ask our local association, as in Timber Towns Victoria, to say that that the council has some concerns about the currency of the information on that national site. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor Buckley, you have a question.
Yes, my question is around, well, it's a comment, just brief comment that I have already flagged that with Timber Towns about the website needing to be updated for the National Timber Councils Association.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, are there any further questions?
Yes. So as it stands, the council representation register is as written on our attachment?
That's the current recommendation.
And there's no amendments?
Just a second. Well, I'll call for a motion in a moment, Councillor Buckley, and
I think we might have a look at audit and risk. I don't think that's what we discussed, is it?
stand by, Councillor Stowe. Are there any further questions, councillors?
Yep.
Councillor Crook.
Just in relation to the Marina Consultative Committee, my understanding was that that committee wasn't going to continue into the future. Is that now not the case?
What's the status of the Marina Committee? Ms Weigel, is that in your remit?
We were bringing a report back to council to consider that. So until such time as the report is considered by council,
the committee still exists. Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Greason.
Mayor, I wish to put an amendment to the motion.
Councillor Greason, what's your amendment?
That we receive and note this report and all attachments pertaining to this report, and adopts the updated Councillor Representation Register 2020 to 2024 for internal committees and external organisations as provided at Attachment 1 with the following amendments. A, replace Councillor Sonia Buckley as a representative of the Audit and Risk Committee with Councillor Mendy Yuri. B, change Councillor Sonia Buckley from the position of Delegate of Timber Towns Victoria to the position of Substitute. And C, change Councillor Tom Crook from the position of Substitute of Timber Towns Victoria to the position of Delegate. And number 3, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to enact the processes to make the necessary changes in recommendation 2. Thank you.
Councillor Greason, that's what is written on the screen now. You can see that.
Point of order, Mayor.
What's your point?
I think that the amendment flies in the face of the advice that I've had from the chair of Timber Towns, and I've been advised by her that any nomination needs to be approved by Timber Towns Victoria, and as I'm the nominated representative for East Gippsland Council for the term of the council, it'll only go out again in such circumstances as what happened with the death of Councillor Malcolm Holt. So, unfortunately, the amendment is in breach of the chair's advice, and so perhaps.
So, Councillor Buckley, what's your point?
Well, the amendment. My point is that the amendment doesn't meet the regulations of the committee itself, and that's
okay.
Been advised.
So the advice that we received is that's not correct, so I'll overrule that and the point is not upheld. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Stowe. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that we've been discussing this for some time, and we are elected to these positions every year, and apart from the one which we found out about recently, which is Rural Councils Victoria, represented, where Councillor Buckley represents us, and that appointment is for 4 full years. We were not aware of that when we first started as councillors, but apart from that, I think it's a desire for us to be able to have experience on the different committees and to represent council opinion, council position properly.
Councillor Greason. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, I think it's in everyone's interest to review these on a regular basis, which we're doing. With the Audit and Risk Committee, we took it upon ourselves to, I shouldn't say this, but remove Mendy from it when she was away in her absence because of reasons she's already outlined, some personal health issues, and we didn't think she'd be able to be available. But she's since resolved those and tells us she is available, so I think that's a sensible move, putting her back. Timber Towns, Tom's been the number 2 during the last 2 years. He expressed an interest at the very start of this to be on that, be our representative on that committee, and that wasn't the case. He's continued to express an interest to be on, and I think it's appropriate now to give Tom a chance to prove his worth on that committee.
Councillor Stowe. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak against the motion?
Yes, I would like to speak against the motion because it isn't meeting the requirements of the Committee of Timber Towns, and I suggest that perhaps an amendment could be made to the motion to state that Councillor Crook puts forward his nomination at the next AGM, which would then fit into the requirements of their committee and would be better received by Timber Towns. It fits in within their scope. So if we could make an amendment to waylay his appointment or his nomination until
amendment
then.
of an amendment?
Yes.
Just seeking some advice, Councillor Buckley.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question.
Yep.
So we have a motion.
And it is the motion.
We have a motion from Councillor Greason. So if Councillor Buckley wished to propose an amendment, that could be considered by the mover and the seconder. So it is possible, yes.
Okay.
But given that it's a motion rather than an amendment to the existing recommendation, it could be just changed. It could be changed with agreement rather than an amendment per se.
So there's a request for an amendment, Councillor Greason. So we are in debate at the moment.
I just have a question for clarification. Is that okay right now, or do we have to let that one
Sure.
lapse first?
Of process, yes.
Yeah, just wondering with the Timber Towns, obviously there's a delegate and a substitute, but can we have 2 delegates that are just equally? No, that's not possible. No. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Uri, so the question is, will you accept the...
Yes, I also have a question of clarification, sorry. At the moment, it appears that we have 2 conflicting reports of the necessary process to change our delegate to Timber Towns.
Yep.
And I'm wondering...
Yep, thanks Councillor Uri. I'm just going to stop right there. We have had advice that the delegate it is a member organisation and we can nominate our delegate. Is that correct, CEO? Through you, Mayor, I might ask Alba just to provide the different advice as we've had. If she could do that, that'd be great.
Indeed. Thank you, Anthony, and through you, Chair. The advice we've received from Timber Towns Victoria is that council can nominate 2 representatives, and then that is considered by Timber Towns Victoria. They're usually accepted for a 4-year term, and that's usually so that the longer term projects have consistency in the people that are overseeing them. However, those nominations can change and others can be put forward by councils because that's not stipulated. That 4-year term is not stipulated in their statement of rules. The nominations would be considered by the TTV at the next meeting if we were to put forward changes. So that's the advice we've received in writing from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Greason, there's a request for an amendment.
No, I don't accept that amendment, but I would like to ask a further question if that's all right, Mayor.
A question of...
Alba's advice.
Yes.
Alba, you said that they would accept 2 representatives, or they would consider 2 representatives but may not accept 2 representatives.
It's, as far as we're aware, it's up to Tim Towns Victoria to consider the nominations that council puts forward. So if we have them on our register, we would then put forward those for Timber Towns to consider.
Okay. Thank you. No, I don't accept.
And the seconder? No. Okay, so councillors, there is still a motion on the table and we are in debate, and Councillor Buckley has spoken against the motion. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to speak initially just about the change from the draft or the officer's recommendation which went out to the public at the end of last week and what's being suggested now in the motion put forward by Councillor Greason. So just to say that I have served on the Audit and Risk Committee for the last 2 years. I was happy actually to stand aside from that committee. I don't feel as if I was pushed. Because I think there was a genuine wish amongst the councillors to have people who'd held positions for 2 years to stand aside and let somebody else have a go at those representations if they wished to. So I was happy to stand aside, and I also thank Councillor Stowe for his sentiments in wanting to save me a bit of workload. But with the draft distribution of positions that went out, I could see that I had a relatively light workload, and I thought that was a bit unfair, really. So that's why I have been happy to put my name forward again to go back or to continue on the Audit and Risk Committee at least for this year in an attempt to try and achieve some equity of workload distribution amongst the councillors. I support Councillor Crook's putting his hand forward for Timber Towns, using the same principle that it's halfway through our councillor term. Councillor Crook has always been interested in that position, and I think it's fair that he has a go. And finally, I'd just like to congratulate the Mayor for taking on the role of Chair of One Gippsland, and also what that means for our CEO in supporting that role. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Uri. Behind every chair of One Gippsland is an astonished CEO. That's right. Councillors, are there any other speakers for or against this motion? Councillor Crook.
Yes, I'd like to speak for the motion, particularly for my own candidacy. This is a role that I put my hand up for initially, now almost 2 years ago. At the time, Councillor Buckley also put her hand up, and I was happy to concede at that point and let her become our principal representative. And so now I think it's only reasonable that I'm given an opportunity to represent our council. I feel I clearly have the background, the capacity and the enthusiasm to do that, and especially to prosecute our timber industry policy. So, yeah, I'd like your endorsement, please. Thank you.
Councillor Crook. Councillor, are there any councillors wishing to speak for or against? Sorry, Councillor Buckley, we're in debate and you can't speak again, I'm afraid. Are there any other...
There was a point of order there.
What's your point, Councillor?
That perhaps we should consider that Councillor Crook's position that he holds professionally could be a conflict of interest as he works in an environmental...
So I won't allow that point, Councillor Buckley, I'm afraid, and I'd rather you didn't say that. I don't think there is any suggestion that there's a conflict of interest. Councillors, are there any Discussion for or against. Councillor Van Diegel.
I'm actually going to be a bit controversial. I'm going to speak against. I think Tom would be perfect in the position, but I don't really feel comfortable with the idea that Sonia is being potentially let go of a committee that she wishes to stay on. I'd be very interested, by the sounds of it, there could be 2 delegates if... No, did I misunderstand that when you just said it? Okay, I thought you said if...
No.
Principal and substitute.
Delegate and a substitute.
Okay, I thought I just understood that you said if they approve, but you're not. That's not possible. No, I will still speak against it. I don't think this process is entirely unfair to someone who's thought they were signing up for a 4-year term. But if you are voted on it, I do think you'll do a great job.
Councillor Greason, you have a right of reply if councillors have exhausted the debate. Councillors, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? The motion is carried. 5, 3, 4, 6, 3. 6, 3.
Mayor, may I call for a division, please?
You sure can. Councillors White and Buckley, you need to be on screen, please. Could you turn your cameras on before there's a division?
Sorry,
Thank
we didn't turn them off.
Yep. No, that's all right. It's just that is a requirement to be visible at all times.
I think it might be a glitch, Mayor.
It's a glitch in the system. Stand by. Okay, councillors, once again, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Uri, Councillor Greason, Councillor Reeves, Councillor Allen, Councillor Stowe, Councillor Crook. Those against? Councillor Van Diegel, Councillor Buckley, Councillor White. The motion is carried 6-3. Councillors, let's move on to the next item, which is urgent and other business. And we are going to move into that. Do we have urgent and other business, CEO?
Yes, Mayor, we do have an item of urgent and other business. And so just to provide some context so that council can consider whether in fact they wish to accept that item of urgent business. On Monday the 20th of February, so last Monday, council received an invitation to appear at a committee hearing in Sale on the inquiry into bank closures in regional Australia. So over the last week, officers have been preparing a submission to use at that inquiry, and given the timing of the invitation, it was not possible for officers to draft a submission in time for publishing in the scheduled council meeting agenda for tonight. Councillors, we also had to nominate the people that may speak at that hearing by Wednesday, the 22nd of February. So that was last Wednesday. So it was all very quick. And I nominated the Mayor, myself and the General Manager at Business Excellence, particularly because of his past banking experience and on the sector. So councillors, that is the rationale for bringing to you tonight this matter of urgent business, which I can then go into a bit more detail about the submission, if that's accepted.
So councillors, there's a recommendation there. Do I have a motion? Councillor Allen, Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to it? Councillor Allen?
I think this is a great opportunity for the Mayor and the CEO and the Manager of Business Excellence to go and talk to the Senate committee on something that is really affecting our community with bank closures.
Thank you.
So I think it's great.
Councillor Crook? Is the motion opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak for or against this motion that we admit this as urgent business? Councillor Buckley.
Yes, certainly. This is affecting the community of Omeo and the surrounding district, having lost our Bendigo Bank representation. And it's the further and the more remote you are in the region of East Gippsland, the harder it is to be able to access services. So I hope that our delegation will speak strongly and represent us well. Thank you.
No, thanks for those comments. It's just about admitting this as urgent business at the moment. So keep your powder dry and keep those excellent comments ready for the next moment. So councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of admitting this as urgent and other business? Carried unanimously. CEO, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So as Councillor Buckley has just indicated, given the recent agency closure in Hinnomunjie and other bank closures we've had over recent times, we were of the view that this was an excellent opportunity for council to advocate on behalf of its community in relation to the importance of face-to-face banking services in a shire such as ours of 21,000 square kilometres. I have provided councillors with a draft submission, and within that draft submission there are 7 key points, and I won't read them word for word, but I will just give a taster of those, thank you. Mayor, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
We believe that the bank closures have a disproportionate impact on people in regional areas, that online banking services are okay if you have good internet connectivity, which we often struggle with, and if it's not the connectivity, it's the power to drive the connectivity. Our businesses and communities are exhausted from continual change, and particularly from natural disasters, but also changes such as these. The face-to-face services are possible. We know they're possible. Some of our smallest communities have them, so we know it can be done if there is a will to do it. There's an issue around banks and the mechanism for cash circulation, and I know that's been raised in the chamber before, and if banks can't do it, then we need the government to step in with a different mechanism. We need there to be some innovation and collaboration to make this happen, and I think the last point that we've put in the submission is that regional people matter. They contribute significantly to Australia, to its culture, to its economic well-being. For Gippsland, for example, $2.66 billion each year. And we believe that on that basis, there should be some recognition that we need these banking services. So, Mayor and councillors, I put a recommendation to you, which will be shown on the screen now, for your consideration. I would also note that given the timeframes that we did this in, it was pretty quick, and I have had some feedback since this was drafted. 3 things have come up. Firstly, cash security when branches close. So how do people actually deposit cash? Yep. Not about just getting cash, but how do you deposit it? Some wording changes around point 7, which I hope I've just captured. And also around power of attorney, where you are required to go, we're advised, into a bank to prove your ID and to document some of the paperwork. So it seems a bit incongruent that you would have, you can't do those things online and yet branches are closing. So there is a couple of minor amendments that would need to be made before we go put the submission in, but I put to you the recommendation that's on the screen to you now.
CEO, thank you for that. Councillors, are there any further questions of the CEO on this matter? Noting that there is a live document, I think, that's been circulated, CEO, is that correct? That allowed, or feedback? And it's pretty tight timelines, like next 10 minutes if there's feedback provided. Thanks, Tom.
So through you, Mayor. So yes, we would need feedback pretty quick. We're presenting at the inquiry on Thursday morning.
Yep.
The actual submission is not due till the 31st of March. So we do have a little bit of wriggle room there. The main reason for bringing it tonight was to get that council authorisation and resolution around presenting that information at Thursday's inquiry.
Yeah, and that adds some weight to the presentation. Thanks, CEO. Councillor Crook.
I'll start by saying
Councillor Buckley.
I thoroughly support us making a submission. I just had a question around the capacity of the inquiry to actually influence the banking sector, given that they're largely commercial decisions taken by private entities.
Through you, Mayor, I probably can't answer that question per se, but what we have acknowledged in our submission is that we recognise that banking is a commercial enterprise, and we've also indicated then if the private sector can't meet the needs of our communities, then the government needs to step in with a mechanism that does.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
Councillor Crook. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, I suppose my question is this an indication that we're being forced into a cashless society and into a new digital economy? Is that what we're up against, and is that what we're going to be presenting in our into this inquiry? will that question be asked?
It's a good question, and sort of the opposite of that in terms of the need for being able to provide cash services.
So through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor. The terms of reference had a number of items, and I'll just run through those quickly because I think it'll pick up on the question that you've just asked. So one of the questions was the branch closures process, including the reasons given for closures. So the inquiry wanting to understand how that occurs in communities. The economic welfare impacts of bank closures on customers and regional communities, so that's pretty straightforward. The effect of bank closures or the removal of face-to-face cash services on access to cash, and that was the one. And then actually there's 5. There was one around the effectiveness of government banking statistics capturing and reporting on regional services, including the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, which we're not making comment on, and consideration of solutions and other related matters. So I think, Councillor Buckley, the issue around cash is on the inquiry's radar, and they have asked that question deliberately to understand what the impact is. I can't speak to the specific things that you've raised, but clearly the inquiry is wanting to understand the impact on cash and cash flow and cash mechanisms. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, are there any other questions of the CEO on this matter? So, councillors, there is a recommendation there. Do I have a motion? Councillor Allen, Councillor Uri, sorry, Councillor Buckley, Councillor Allen?
No, I don't. No, I think we've covered it.
Councillor Uri?
I think we have covered it too, but thank you for taking the initiative to respond to this opportunity. I think it's really important for many of our communities. It's really a live issue for lots of people. So thank you and good luck with the presentation.
Thanks. Councillor Uri. Councillors, is the motion opposed? And would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Buckley, your eloquent words earlier were probably timely right now if you wanted to speak again.
Yeah, look, I think it's important for remote areas throughout our region to be able to access, especially for the elderly in our community who all they know is a cash economy. They don't know how to use digital services. So it's unfair on them, and we certainly need to advocate for our remote areas as much as we can to ensure that we look after our community and our economies. And so I fully support this initiative, and I really hope that the banking sector can be coerced back into offering a service that is our right, to be able to trade in cash.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, I'd just like to add, and look, thanks for the opportunity and for being able to represent the views of council and the community at this Senate inquiry. I think it's really a great honour. In the time that I've lived in East Gippsland, I've seen bank closures in Omeo, in Swifts Creek and in Orbost and Benambra. There was a branch in Benambra, and we used to use all of those through the school, and those branches have all closed around us. So it's a significant issue. We seem to be shrinking in our community, and hopefully there's some social conscience that the banking sector has as well as an economic conscience. But I'll put the motion to the vote though, councillors. Thank you. All those in favour? Councillors, carried unanimously, CEO. Thank you. Councillors, we're on to item 7, which is confidential business, and I'll need a motion to close the meeting to the public. Moved and seconded, so I'll need to read this out. In accordance with provisions section 66(2) of the Local Government Act, to consider the following item for the reasons that are listed. Moved Councillor Allen, seconded Councillor Stowe. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak for or against this motion? I'll put the motion to the vote that we're closing the meeting to general public. All those in favour? Councillors White and Buckley, you've disappeared again. Just somebody rub the magic lantern and make the internet work again, would you? There they are. That's good. Yep, you're back again. Yep. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. We're closing the meeting.
Yep.
So thank you, councillors and members of the public. Thank you for joining us tonight at the Council Chamber in East Gippsland Shire. Councillors, thanks for your participation and your work and your decision making. They're always hard. We don't do it because it's easy. CEO, even though we don't have officers here, just to note again, to thank the officers for their excellent reports, and it makes decision making easier when we have good reports. But thank you everybody for being here. I'll declare the meeting closed.